Namaskaram. Dance Conversations is a retrospective of Indian classical dance in Southern California and a personal digital documentation which will feature all of those that have contributed and enriched my life and my journey in dance. This journey was most certainly shaped by my Guru Swamimalai Rajaratnam, or Vaidyanathan as we called him. My association with him lasted 25 years, and though we lost him 26 years ago, his aura still lingers. He trained many dancers who have gone on to achieve success as performers and teachers worldwide. I have been very fortunate to know many of them. Today, I have invited three of them with whom I share a closer association. Jothi Raghavan, Priyadarsini Govind, and Nirupama Vaidyanathan. Welcome, Jothi, Priya, and Niru. Thank you so
Ramya.
much. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about and share our memories of our respected Vaidya.
Thank
I
you,
want
Ramya.
to take a moment to introduce them all. Jyothi is a pioneer, moved to the United States in 1974, probably one of the earliest dancers, teachers in the diaspora, and has a school called Nrityanjali in Boston. Priyadarsini is, of course, a very popular and much respected performer of Bharatha Natyam in India and the world over. Nirupama Vaidyanathan is multi-talented. She's a dancer, she's a teacher, she's a writer, she's a researcher and a journalist, and runs the Sankalpa Foundation in Fremont, California. So I look forward to this interesting and lovely conversation about Vaidya. So I talked about my closer association with them. As I mentioned, I've been fortunate to be associated with my Guru bahens, or those that share this teacher. So when I moved to Madras, or Chennai as it's known today, in 1969, to further advance my training in Bharatha Natyam, Jothi, whose family lived in the street parallel to my grandmother's, was being trained by Vaidya, Jothi, her mother and sister. And so it was suggested that I should enroll with Vaidya, besides which he was also an upcoming young guru at that time. And it may sound weird nowadays, but in those days, Vaidya used to come home and teach us at home, so it was convenient for him to come from Jyothi's house to my house to teach. So, Jothi, did you begin your lessons with Vaidya, or did you move later to?
Actually, I think I should say I began with Vaidya, even though I went to Vaidyanathan School of Dance when I was like 5 years old. I don't have any memory of that dance school at all. I think, I should say I started from my very, very beginning with Vaidya when I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, and you had your Arangetram with Vaidya, I guess.
Yes, 1966.
Oh, okay. With your mother and sister, or just by yourself?
No, just by myself. It was my solo. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
My mom had her Arangetram under Guru Ramya Pillai. That was 64 maybe. I'm not 100% sure. She started learning only after we were born, and so she had her Arangetram, but my Vaidya sang for her Arangetram. And she didn't want us to go to a dance school to learn. So, and then Vaidya was up and coming, and he really, she had a lot of respect for him. So she invited him to our house to teach us, both my sister and I. So we started with him, but my sister decided dance is not for her, and she dropped out for some time, and then she joined again. But so I had my Arangetram by myself.
But I remember the three of you dancing, of course. I was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
young
She
at
later,
that
she
time,
joined
so-
later. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So, as I meant, you had something to say, Jothi? You wanted to add
yeah,
something?
and then my mom also, started with Vadyar. She stopped going to Vargu school, and she started learning from Vadyar because Vadyar was coming to our house to teach. So she also started, and we performed. We started performing together. 1968 was our first performance together, and then on we've been performing together. So it was completely Vadyar's coaching.
Yeah. It's special to have somebody like that with you on stage. La?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, with Priya, Priya and I learned from the same Vadyar and Kalanidhi Mami at the same time. Of course, we've had several exchanges because she had invited me along with my friend, colleague Priya Srinivasan, to present an excerpt from Sweating Saris at the Natya Kala conference, which she was the convener of that particular year, and also invited me to speak at the Navadarshana workshop in Minnesota in 2019. I've had the pleasure of presenting her solo work here in Southern California a couple of times. But before I actually started with Vadyar, I had learnt for several years with K.N. Dakshinamurthy in Delhi, who was the youngest brother of the legendary Dandayudapani Pillai. Didn't you also learn with somebody else before, Priya?
Yeah, actually I started when I was 6. So 6 to 9 I was with a teacher called Usha. She used to, I think she learned from Lakshmanan sir, from Vaidyanathan auntie, yeah. And I think even from Dandayudapani sir, I'm not sure really. So I learnt one margam from her, and meaning I did my Arangetram when I was 9, like most of us. And it was after my Arangetram because Ushanti was a very young teacher, and so she felt that I should go to somebody who was more experienced, and YGD Mama took us to Kalanidhi Mami. So I joined Kalanidhi Mami first. This is 74, and Kalanidhi Mami then gave us the choice of either Dhananjayan sir or Vadyar. And then Kalanidhi Mami herself said, why don't you go to Vadyar? Not Dhananjayan sir, sorry, Adiyar Lakshmanan sir. Adiyar Lakshmanan sir and Vadyar. So she was the one who chose Vadyar. She said, go to Vadyar. And that's when I started with Vadyar. And Vadyar used to come home at that time.
Yeah.
I think he was taking classes at home. It was much later that we all,
Yeah. I remember coming to class, having my class at your place at some point.
At a later point, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, YGD Mama was the one who recommended Vadyar to us as well, because my grandmother was inquiring, and I think she wanted to be mentoring me. She didn't want me to go to an institution or a group class. And then he was saying, oh, Jothi, Vadyar is coming. Why don't you have him come over and teach Ramya as well? And that's how we got introduced to Vadyar. So that's interesting
Yeah, I know. YG Mama was sort of instrumental in connecting everybody.
And I feel it's so important. I'm so happy that, of course, we have great teachers, but I'm so happy we were able to learn from Vadyar. Like a fortuitous act of fate, right? So, we just started with Vadyar. Because Vadyar was then just starting out, I think. Yeah, he was... Of course, he had a lot of students, but not the way he was later. All his students were performing all the time.
All over the place, yeah. As far as Niru is concerned, I think I might have met you a few times in Chennai, but I think when we really connected was when you came with Vadyar and the group in 1994 on tour, and we spent almost a month or 6 weeks together. And then, of course, subsequently you moved to California, and we both actually did a program in memory of Vadyar in 2004, which was the 10th anniversary of his passing. Niru and brought her students and performed here in Southern California, and we did the same up north. And we had actually Vadyar's grandnephew, Swamimalai Suresh, who came and sang and did Natuvangam for us for that program. And after that, of course, Niru also served on a post-event panel for Sweating Saris at Stanford University a couple of years ago. And she also had invited me to participate in a couple of her projects. One was Shaping California, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and also a piece that you wrote for India Currents when you were the editor there.
That's right.
So
That's right, yeah.
So when did you begin your lessons with Vadyar, Niru?
Yeah, I was listening to Priya and Jothi and thinking, like Priya, I started with Pakirsami Pillai because my mother had learnt dance with Pakirsami Pillai in Delhi for a few years. So he had moved to Chennai when I was a little girl, and so she took me to him for a short time. And after a little while, he was not able to teach, so my mother took me to Kumari Kamala, who was, such a legendary dancer at the time, and requested her to teach me. And I remember very well, she asked me to do Alaripu, which I had learned from Pakirsami Pillai. So I did the Alaripu, and right after that she said, I am going to be immigrating to the US in a few months. So if she starts with me, then there will be another break, and she will have to restart again. So let us use this opportunity to, have her go to Rajaratnam sir, and I will personally call him and tell him that you will be coming over to meet him. He will be the right person to guide this young girl and take her forward. And like Priya said and Jothi said, I'm forever grateful for that direction towards Vadyar, which Kumari Kamala gave, because from that point on there was no turning back, and whether it was me or my mother who guided me in my initial years, we placed our trust in him, in his vidvat, in his dedication to his teaching, and the high standards that he had for all his students. Whether you were 12 years old or 15 years old or 18 years old when you stood on stage, he demanded a certain rigor and a certain standard of each student. And so there was no turning back after that point. It was like coming home to somebody who was able to guide and take me forward in this journey, which continues to this day.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because Pakirsami Pillai was the brother in between Dandayadapani Pillai and Dakshinamurti. So there is more of a connection than just Vadyar as well. There are so many degrees of connection.
That's right.
So some of you have already kind of answered my next question, but and we'll talk about it. But Priya, what is your memory of your early years of training with Vadyar?
Vadyar, whenever I think of him, I only think of a very gentle person. Very kind, very gentle, extremely patient, and completely lost in his world of music. I can just remember him just putting the Vetlapaka, right, and putting it in, and he'll have his eyes somewhere, and he'll be thinking of his music. So these are you have these snapshots. Images in your mind, isn't it? That's what I remember with Vadyar.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, for me, I don't think I was, a very motivated kid as a motivated dancer as a kid, because I did it because my mother wanted me to, and there was no talking back to her, right? And you did it because you had to. And Vadyar used to come in the mornings and in the evenings after school. So it was very excruciating to, after a long day's school, to get into your dance pyjamas and start dancing, isn't it? And I don't think I thought twice about showing my discomfort on my face. Vadyar, I mean, to this day, I cringe when I think about it, how patient. And now as a teacher, I realize how much that can, affect the teacher, isn't it? But you cannot show that to the student. I don't know what he felt, but what he was actually thinking, but he never let on anything. He was so kind. I will be eternally grateful for that kindness, because I think if he had been any different, I don't know if I would have continued, right? Because as a child, these things make so much of a difference to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, the exact same thing. I reflect on the same qualities. Vadyar, when he would walk on the road, to come to our house, he would always be immersed in his singing, constantly, composing some music or singing something, always lost in his music. And I always tease him, I think you like music more than dance itself, So he was such a musician. And of course, everything that Priya said about being so gentle and so kind, especially we were children and we were not very disciplined children. And for us to, he was, if we say, kaal valikaduna, Paravalamma, it doesn't matter if your legs break, I can send you to the hospital, but just keep dancing. Things like that. He'll just be joking with us rather than yelling at us. And that's what I remember about him. And then he was a friend. Even he didn't, put his foot down and say, you better do this and you better practice. And he wouldn't yell at me or anything.
No.
He was always such a gentle soul. And even when he came for the tour with us, he was like my mom or my dad, very, very kind and compassionate. That's what I remember about Vadyar. Even though somehow he instilled the discipline in us. I don't know how he did it, but he never yelled. It was always, this is the way you're supposed to dance. Step vachiko kai apdibar. I don't know if you remember. Step apdibar.
I always wonder how he taught us, having never danced himself.
Exactly.
Because sometimes when we tell these people, it's like Greek to them. And I'm like, I wonder how did he make us do all those beautiful movements without even demonstrating it? And how did we grasp all those things? I have no idea, I always wonder about it. Niru?
காலை பிரிச்சு வச்சிருந்தா he will say ரெண்டு காலும் பஸ் போறது நடுவுல things like that. He'll just joke about everything rather than காலை சேர்த்து வச்சுக்கலன்னா I'm going to yell at you or something. He'll just make a joke out of everything. So everything sort of
No, I agree with all that Priya and Jothi said, but I also think that I remember the way he used to hold his mudras. That's a very deep memory for me, like all his mudras, because like you said, Ramya, he would sit down and teach, right? And so the hands is what we saw, when he held his hands. That was the one part of the body that we saw clearly, and that I saw clearly, and all of us too. And so his mudras would be so perfect,
Clear,
whenever he demonstrated anything. And so that is a very clear memory. And as they said, very kind and compassionate, and always made a joke. But the other thing is that somehow every time I went into class as a young girl, I always wanted to do better than the previous day, and I don't know how he brought that desire within me, because the one thing is he was not a man of many words. It was not like he was giving us some long lecture about, how we should do this or that, but somehow he was able to communicate the standard that he set for us. Even if we were doing a Jatishwaram or the first Tilana that I learned from him, the Kamas Tilana, I remember very well learning the Kamas Tilana from him. And so somehow you wanted to do better and get that smile of appreciation, that little nod. Even while dancing, sometimes you would see him smile and nod. That was just that little expression would tell you that you did better than the previous day.
Yeah.
And so that would make you want to do well. So he was such an inspiring teacher in many, many ways. And of course his music, right? His music was so beautiful.
So
beautiful to dance to.
Yeah. So
Beautiful
absolutely. Actually, I have, I look at it from the perspective having been teaching for so many years, and I look at it as, when Vadyar used to come to my house to teach and he was supposed to go to Jyothi's and come, or vice versa. So he would say he'd come at a particular time, and sometimes he'd be there, sometimes he won't show up, and we'll be just waiting for an hour, 2 hours, and then we'll say, I guess he's not going to come, because he didn't have a phone in those days. He didn't have a landline, so there was no way to reach him. If he didn't show up, he didn't show up. And so then he would have to call from somebody's house and say, "Illa na naalek varen, I'll come tomorrow." But when he came, the class could be 30 minutes, it could be 3 hours, right? We cannot say, "Oh, sir, I have somewhere else to go. Vadyar, I have to go now." We didn't, because we wanted to take anything and everything he was willing to give, and whatever he gave, we were ready to take, and wanted to take. And also, I think many a time I feel like every item, not every, but many items that we learned, we had to beg and plead and say, "Please, sir, no telana choli kodungo." And I think we only got what we deserved. Nothing was ever handed to us, or nothing was ever given. And I feel that made us more resilient, and also treasure everything that we got from Vadyar, not take anything for granted. Neither the time he gave us, nor what he taught us in terms of items or, technique or whatever, which is something that I share with my students. And obviously, it's a different time and place. We cannot teach the way we were taught. I don't think the students have that kind of resilience today and patience. They want everything like yesterday. And so, but I think, I don't know if they did it consciously, but whatever method they used to teach, I think made us that much more strong, I feel. And I agree completely. I don't remember Vadyar ever uttering a bad word or swearing or shouting, or I don't recall at all. Obviously, even if he got angry, it must have been so rare that it hasn't even registered in my head. I don't even remember when he got angry or, upset.
Actually, Ramya, I just wanted to add something here.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things that I find so interesting, and I wanted to know, and use this opportunity, to meet all of you to speak about it. The first thing was about when Niru was talking about, that appreciation. That is so interesting, isn't it? That method of teaching, where I think when we were dancing, I remember somewhere there was one part of you that was always watching him and waiting for his response. And if there was a light that changed in his eyes, or there was this little bit of an indication that you did well, it would actually spur you on. I think that quality that he had shaped your aesthetics also, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you realized if you did it like that, that's what he approved. And that was the way he taught you to become better. I don't think there was no clear-cut instruction, kaiya thooku, kaiya mela vei, நிமிர்ந்து நில்லு உட்காரு. இதை தவிர I don't remember any other instruction. And also I remember him doing, that varnatla, there are these, and the virahatla, he bite his, something like that, right? I remember these images in my mind. And when he'll say varardu, I don't know, Ramya, probably you had the same experience. Usually abhinaya vara edathla he'll say mami kitta pannin vandudu, right? But certain things I just love the way he did it. So I say, sir, neenga solli thango, enak I want to know how to do this. And the way he used to show the Abhinaya sitting up, I still remember him in his banyan and lungi. But when he danced, it was so stunning. And even at that age,
to reiterate what you're saying, ரொம்ப cute he would do things,
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I didn't have Kalanidhi Mami teaching Abhinaya when I was learning. She started teaching maybe in 72.
73, 74, You were just leaving
72.
probably.
I think I was absolutely the first student that Vaiji Mama took to Kalanidhi Mami. So Banu and I, my sister and I, were taken to Kalanidhi Mami around 72. And then I got married in 74 and I came away. So I hardly had any opportunity to learn. Like, unga kittella solra madri, Mami kitta poi kathittu vanna solla mudiyadhu. Vaidiyar is the only one who taught me Abhinaya and Vitta and everything. So, he was exquisite in somehow communicating and making sure we learned the way that he wanted us to learn. And, we are all successful in our own ways.
Absolutely.
And we owe it all to Vaidya.
And the other thing I wanted to speak about was about the influences. I mean, as teachers, you probably resonate with it. The thing is, is it okay if we speak in Tamil also, Ramya?
Yeah.
Okay. So certain things, what you don't want your students to take, right? They watch so much dancing, right? But you don't want them to take it, but at the same time, you don't want to say, don't take it. Or, but with Vaidya, I always used to wonder how he handled these things. Because he never told us, don't watch or you have to be like this, nothing. But I remember him saying certain things like, I don't know if you, right? ஏமா அப்படி டமால் டமால்னு அடிச்சு பயமுடுத்துற வெறச்சுண்டு ஆடாத அழகா ஆடு சிரிச்சுண்டு ஆடு. I mean, these are all things that you remember. And one thing that I learned to appreciate so much is both Vaidya and Kalanidhi Mami never discussed other students with one student with another. Never.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
Not only that, they also never put down other teachers or other styles of dancing. They allowed you to, have your own judgment, but gently nudged you the way they wanted you to see it. How intelligent, and they taught you integrity, I think. That values they taught you, which I think is so important, which you find it's not very common. Because this, discussing, in the style, on the style. No, they taught you to appreciate everything. Take influences, but then adopt it in a way that looks good on you. Don't just take things, right?
So I wanted to add to that, Priya. It's absolutely true. I agree with you 100%. I think Vaidya, to me, when I think about it, through all of these, the ways in which he taught me how to think about something, and not what to think exactly about how to approach a Varnam Jati, how to approach a Tilana, and so the approach was taught, but not like these rules set in stone, which gave me certainly at a very young age a lot of confidence as a solo performer, to have your teacher place that trust in you to say that you can think about this and this is how, this is the overall approach, and then you take it forward on stage or in class. I think that gave me confidence, which has held, which continues to this day. The ability to stand in front of an audience and own that song, truly own it while presenting it. And the other thing that I also wanted to mention was that he allowed each dancer strengths to really stand out. I always did adavas slightly differently from each one of you. And, I've written about this as well, that if there was a time that we got together to dance, it was just mayhem, because I would do takita one way, somebody else would do a different way, and it would be the same takita adavu. For instance, for a long time, he had me do just this usual side takita, but for me, he asked me to raise the hand, like, I did a raise like this and then brought it back in a straight line. And that's how I did side takita for a long time. And so if I got together with any of you and we've danced together, and it would be very difficult to suddenly change, or the kann parve. Parve itself would be different. Even if the hand went the same way, each of us looked differently from one point A to point B. We followed the hand differently. And he had sort of kept that, thinking that this hand movement looks good for you, and so he had kind of set that in our body. So because of that, when I came to watch Priya or Ramya or any of the other students, there was always this sense of anticipation that even if the same varnam was done, it was always, there were tweaks. It was never the same. There were tweaks, there were differences, and that was also a point of departure for me to think about, why is Vaidya allowing me to do this? So is this why he's asking me to do this? So that was also a point where, you stopped and thought for yourself and gained confidence in your own style. So that is something amazing, that if anyone were to look at many of his students, there would be some similar qualities that we all have, that stamp of his teaching, and yet we would also always be different. And that is an incredible legacy to have received from a teacher, from such a great guru, and something which I treasure deeply.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell my students, how our teacher shaped each one of us individually and focused on each of our strengths and made us all into very strong dancers, which is a very special quality. Each one looks different, just like Niru was talking about. Each one looks different, but at the same time, we all have the same kind of lot of commonalities as well. So that is some, incredible quality.
Ramya, I don't know. Sorry, Ramya. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you, but this is something Vaidya told me about you. Not about you, not in that way. So he told me after a program, right? He normally tells you, man of few words. He would never really review a program in detail. But he told me, correct. Paravalle, he said, Ramya Okananda first role, ava moonjila ni, ava eppadi rasikkrangiradha ava moonjila kaamipa. இன்னைக்கு அவன் மூஞ்சில ரொம்ப ரசிச்சுன்னு பார்த்தா பரவாயில்ல நீ ஆடினது. I remember that very well to this day.
Wow, I never. Well, on those lines, I was going to say that Vaidya, I always look at Vaidya, and both Mami also were just so generous, and you've said that already, brought it up. It was so generous of him to allow us to go learn from Mami, which not all gurus did, and Vaidya solvar, and the Mami eppadi and the maramunji la pesha vekkaran theriyala, So that is one thing. And then I remember one time a musician told me, one of my accompanying artists, unga Vaidya romba lucky, because everybody learns all the basics from somebody else and then comes to him for advanced training, so he doesn't work with them on the basics. But I said, obviously there's something special that he gives, that everybody is attracted to him, even though they have other gurus prior to that, but continuing with what Niru said, I came from Dakshinamurthy sir. I had learned for 6 years, and I had learned all my adavas. And only in 1994, because we never performed as a group ever, and I don't know why the heck I didn't notice these differences watching others, but I suddenly realized that my Sharukaladavu, I was holding Kataka Mukham on the top, and Anu and all were holding it like this. And I was like, why are you doing that? And she said, that's how it is in Varur style. And I was like, Vaidya never said anything to me. I've been with him for 25 years and he's never mentioned anything. And then in the Kuttadava ipdi poduvava Tanjavurla, Varurla ipdi poduva. So shila samayam ipdi pannuven, shila samayam ipdi pannuven. I don't know how I chose that. But Vaidya would never, had never even mentioned that, oh, that is not Varur style. Never. And I was just thinking, so obviously his, it was very visual, it was about whether it looked good. And as Niru said, whether it looked good on you, if it looked good on you, he wouldn't even open his mouth and say anything. Unless something that didn't suit his aesthetic, he will not change. Even if you had learned from a different guru and doing it differently, he wouldn't change it, And I think that's kind of some methodology that I try to follow a little bit with my students. But it's hard because they do have to perform together. Remember how hard it was for us to perform in 94, because all of us were executing, even the we were doing it a little differently, each of us. And it was so etched, embedded in our bodies, it was hard to change at that point,
I also wanted to say something that has made a huge impact in my career as an artist. But we were talking about Vaidya's music, right? The thing is, I never realized, I'm not sure if it's the same for all of you, how lucky I was that day in and day out, right, in class, you had that quality of music that guided your dance.
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
So you could never, so always, till today, I think that standard that he set and what you're used to for dance speaks through his music. Whoever sings for you today, the greatest musician, still for me, the dance, still I hear it in his voice. And I think that's the best, most treasured gift that he has given me. His music, and therefore the dance that comes out of it, it's I don't know, I can never begin to explain the impact, right, that he's had on, and he would do it so easily, anayasama. And even for Mami's compositions, I remember Vijayalakshmi Mami used to sing, right? Mami oda padam, Mami items na post interval, it would be Vijayalakshmi Mami sitting with Vaidya. And that was always a big exercise. Sir, padungo sir. Sir, neenga padungo sir. That would be a big joke. But when Vaidya sang it, these were not items that he taught.
Yeah.
But the way he sang them, I just...
He just brought so much bhavam, and I always look at his choreography as musical, Like I always think if a guru is a musician, then their dance aesthetic is also musical and lyrical. If they are mridangam players, then it's very technically rhythmic, and probably because we were trained by Vaidya and, as you said, listening to his music every day, I prefer this kind. I prefer the musical rather than the highly technical rhythmic style of dance. I always feel
his jatis, Ramya.
Yeah,
his jatis.
Yeah.
Yes,
Always
the way
graceful, melodic, lyrical, And I know Vaidya Repo, he'll say, graceful arkano, He emphasized that a lot about grace.
In fact, when, after he passed away, I had to get other musicians to sing for my dance. It was so difficult. I just could not dance for anybody else's music or Natuangam. It was just I just couldn't do it, because even when I was performing after I moved to the States, I was using his music to dance for. So I did not have anybody else sing for my dance. So it was very, very difficult for me to transition to some other musicians,
Yeah.
And all of you,
such a tragedy.
all of you, I want to know, for me that when Vaidya used to start anybody's program, if you've gone to some of Vaidya's students' program, right? He would, and that Jai Shuddha Purivasa Arambippaal. Oh my God, it was like one world, another world that you're entering, right? In his voice. I can't hear it in anybody else's voice.
I know.
I also I used to like one particular nuance in the way he sang. So in a Varnam, when we do the Sanchari Abhinaya, and then we are going to start the Tattumettu, the way he would sing for the Tattumettu with a certain grip, and like a the whole audience will understand that something is wrapping up. Different. And we are coming to the Tattumettu, and you tap back. There itself, he will set up the momentum for the next jati. So you, as a dancer, you will feel that excitement on stage when you tap back, because you feel it in his voice, And when you watch him, when you're sitting in the audience and watching another student on stage, also you'll feel that little jump when the Tattumettu starts and the tapping back. So he knew dance so beautifully that he could, even those little nuances. The other thing that I think of when I do Nattavangam on stage these days, I have done many, many performances with him, because it would be hard sometimes for dates to work out with Sethuraman sir, who sang for me for many years, or Gauri Akka, who also sang with Vaidya. Or Rajshekharan sir. These were the three accompanying musicians with whom Vaidya had a long association, and with whom I had worked with as well. And if the dates did not work out, he would do the whole Nattavangam and sing the whole concert for me. And now
he has done it so many times.
So now when you finish the jati, and to be able to take the arati immediately and then keep going into the sahityam, the energy that it took, and sometimes traveling with the stamina, and then the traveling, you dance in one place and the next day would be the performance so the stamina that it took to do all of that, he bore that so lightly, before a performance, he would be the most relaxed person on the face of the planet, sitting in the green room, just putting Vetala Paka and humming to himself, never displayed any kind of, so a lot of his work was done in the classroom, right? He never made you, sometimes when I hear of teachers who would not finish a song and, put a young teenager or somebody in a lot of stress right before a performance, I would think of him, because there would be that sufficient practice done so that the performance itself was well rehearsed from everybody, from me, from him, the accompanying artist, everybody, so that when we went on stage, it was always a pleasurable experience. And one thing he mentioned, which I, remembered also while getting ready for this, was he said, சிரிச்சுண்டே ஸ்டேஜுக்கு போனோம், சிரிச்சுண்டே வெளியில வரணுமா, அப்படிதான் பண்ணணும், டென்ஷனே இருக்கக்கூடாது அப்படின்னு. So that was his philosophy of, getting you ready to walk on and walk off stage.
Couple of other things he would say to program ku pona, he'll say, நான் புஷ்பாஞ்சலி பார்ப்பேன், அதுலயே தெரிஞ்சிடும் இந்த பொண்ணு நன்னா ஆடுமா இல்லையான்னு, அப்புறம் புஷ்பாஞ்சனால நான் எழுந்து வந்துருவேன் நான் அப்படின்னு.
That's another thing, we should appreciate. He used to go to other people's dances.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was not just doing our concerts and sitting at home. He always went to other people's kacheris and watched them and observed them and appreciated. So that is another very important quality that Vaidya had.
I remember how Vaidya would also, come and watch so many performances. I remember I had just started driving, and I would drive myself to dance class, and he would make sure that sometimes my classes would coincide in the late afternoon, so that I could change in his house after class and be able to take him to a performance. We would make quite a funny spectacle, because he would never sit in the front seat along with me. However much I requested him to do so, he would always sit at the back, and I would drive him to performances. Many dance performances I've attended with him. I've also attended many Pata kacheris with him, where I've listened to so many of the stalwarts of the era along with him. And he always appreciated both dance and music, and had the largeness of his spirit, his heart, that he even watched young upcoming performers in dance at that time and enjoyed those performances thoroughly. And this is something I also remember very fondly about my December season times with Vadya.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
when I'm listening to everybody, right, I think though we have a lot of common experiences, we also have very special, each of us has a different relationship with,
Absolutely.
isn't it? And I was for me, I think Niru was talking about how Shirichinde, stage ku poitu Shirichinde varno, right? I think I must have given Vadyar a very hard time, because எனக்கு எப்பவுமே அந்த வர்ணம்ல செகண்ட் ஹாஃப் பண்ணுவேனா மாட்டேனான்னு ஐ நெவர் நோ, ரைட்? ஐ ரிமெம்பர் ஒன் பெர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ் ஐ ஆக்சுவலி வெண்ட் இன்சைட் அண்ட் வாத்தியார் கேம் பேக் ஸ்டேஜ். ஸ்டில் இப்ப நினைச்சு பார்த்தா ஹவ் ஐ ட்ரபிள்ட் ஹிம், பாவம். பட் ரொம்ப குவாய்ட்டா, பரவாயில்லம்மா போய் முடிச்சுட்டு வந்துடும், he said go finish it and come, so I think in his mind இந்த பொண்ணு வந்து ஃபுல்லா பண்ணுவாளா மாட்டாளா வர்ணம்ல, I think every program he must have had that, but he never let on. I think the kindness with which he allowed you to grow and find your space and your commitment, right? Like when I think of it was not indulgent. I think it was a very intelligent way of handling children.
And and I don't know whether he did it consciously or that's who he was. I don't even think sometimes they didn't like plan, I'm going to be like this or I'm going to teach like that. I don't think, I think a lot, like I tell my students, okay, this is what my Vadyar would say, Pushpanjali nana adlana elundu poduven. So you guys have to, if you're doing Arangetram, your first item has to be really strong, otherwise you can't engage your audiences. And things like that I tell them. When I tell them Vadyar did not even demonstrate one adavu, didn't get up, they'll say, how did you learn, auntie? I said, I don't know. It's a miracle that we all ended up being dancers. I don't know how we learned. But I think a lot of things we were, even for ourselves, I think we were resilient. We just didn't know because there was no other way. Like for instance, I tell my students, you're recording every class, you're doing all that, but what you're not learning any faster or any better than us. And we didn't even have audio recording, right?
We didn't write down or anything. Just learned it.
If we ask Vadyar for recording when Walkman came, probably in the mid 70s, he'll say, Swami anadhukku buddhi kuduthirukar, he'll say, go home. So everything we had to practice on our own. It was not like we had a video recording, audio recording, this, that, and all of that. And now I think back and I say, how the heck did we learn,
Earlier that when I started with Kalanidhi Mami, I finished my Arangetram with Vadyar and was learning with him for a while after that, before I also started going to Kalanidhi Mami for Abhinaya classes. And going to Kalanidhi Mami's classes, I learned how to use a notebook and to write notes for dance in a very systematic manner. And so I carried a notebook to Vadyar's class once. And as soon as he saw the notebook in my hand and the reason as to why I had brought it, immediately he told me, keep the notebook aside and get up and dance. So, எதுக்குமா நோட்புக் எடுத்துன்னு வந்திருக்க, படிக்கிறதுக்கு எடுத்துன்னு வந்திருக்க, இங்க டான்ஸ் ஆட வந்திருக்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. So it was always in his classes, the dance had to be felt, had to be understood and remembered in your bodies. And this is something I mention to my students when I teach, because very often now I'm always audio recording or allowing video recording in classes to help the students remember when they go home, and so that they can practice well. Whereas when we were learning, you had to be so focused during class time, making sure that you absorbed and remembered everything that you did. Because when you walked out of that classroom, you were left with no audio or video recording of what had been taught. and all of it had to be absorbed in the mind and remembered in the body. So this is a valuable skill I learned through many years of being with Vadyar, which still serves me to the present day. The ability to, remember a song and to map it out in the mind, and to map it, of course, in the body after that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my students keep asking me this constantly, how did you learn? What was the method? I have absolutely no recollection of how he taught me.
Yeah.
I just remember learning from him, but I have no idea what the methodology he used, because we never wrote down anything and we never recorded anything, but somehow everything is, I remember every single hand that he taught me, my first, before Arangetram, that Margam, every item I remember, every step I remember, every hand gesture I remember so well, even until today, it's completely sunk into her.
Talking about what Priya said about the Varnam, I was dancing at the Yogalakshmi Kalyan Mandapam for this Muttamil Peravai many, 40 years ago. And my earring, I think my mother-in-law was singing for me. So I was doing the Tilana and she continued to sing. And my earring had fallen, and it had fallen with the thunder facing upwards. And I could hear that Vadyar had stopped doing Natvangam, and I was wondering why he had stopped. I was thinking, what happened? I didn't know that my earrings had fallen. I was just dancing, and and I think I stepped on the Toda, and the thing pierced my foot. Of course, I didn't know anything. I just continued to dance, and then when I finished the Tilana and I walked back, there were all these blood drops on the stage because my it had pierced my the sole of my foot. And then I think Vadyar, when he saw the earring fall, and I was dancing around the Toda, he was so nervous that, I was going to step on it, which I did ultimately. So he couldn't do Natvangam. He was just sitting there kind of wondering what to do or how to, I don't know, probably just worried. And then I realized afterwards that was the reason that he had stopped, because he was following my foot to make sure that I wouldn't step on it, So Annamadri, he was very, I think, conscious program Poda of what was going on, and and it's happened to me a few times that I think it happened to us also when we were dancing in a group, right? In 94. That, Vadyar would be very conscious of each of us dancing and making sure that he supports us to the best of our ability. And even if and of course he had, Armugam sir was amazing, he played for for my Arangetram. And then of course Kannan also, he knew everything of Vadyar's inside out, upside down.
Yeah, Kannan was such a huge fan of Vadyar.
I know.
And Gauri, who, she came to accompany during my United States tour. She would say, Vadyar பாடவே விட மாட்டேங்கிறாரு என்ன, அவரே பாடிட்டு இருக்கார், கொஞ்சம் சொல்லுங்க, சொல்லு அவர்கிட்ட. Please give me an opportunity to sing, because he enjoyed singing so much.
Yeah.
So, I'm just sitting there. I've come to sing, but she's not letting me sing because he enjoyed singing so much.
In Vijayalakshmi Mami's case, she would say, "Sir, abhi Papa," she'll say, "Ningle padungo," she will just let Vadyar sing everything. She'll be so nervous sitting next to Vadyar.
How many times during Kalandi Mami's items, Arambippa, we'll be waiting for Vijayalakshmi Mami. She won't start, but Vadyar will start.
That's what I was going to ask you, Jothi, personally about. We were talking about, teaching this generation, and particularly in the diaspora, because we've been, now we have WhatsApp and Skype and Zoom and FaceTime and all of that.
Yeah.
But, it was a different world when I came, and you came even earlier than that. And I remember I had no intention to teach, and I had forgotten everything the way I had learned my early lessons. So and being new immigrants, we couldn't pick up the phone and just call Vadyar and say, you can't, you just have to figure out yourself the sequence, the curriculum or whatever. So it must have been hard, no? Jyoti?
Yeah, because we didn't have like a Kalakshetra, mode of teaching. எட்டு தட்டடவு or எட்டு நாட்டடவு அந்த மாதிரி எல்லாம் நம்ம கத்துக்கவே இல்லையே. So I had to recreate my own syllabus. வாத்தியார் இந்த மாதிரி தான் சொல்லி தந்திருப்பார். Like so much of thought process went into when I was making a syllabus for my students, and then now it's become sort of a standard. But we hardly remember the methodology by which. Yeah, the sequence, how he taught or anything, because we had our Arangetram so early in our lives, and then we were performing, so there was no I have no idea how he taught.
About
in fact,
teaching, right? We were not thinking that we were going to teach or anything.
No, not at all. In fact, somebody was asking me, so when you came here, did you start teaching? I said, no, I didn't have any idea that I was going to teach. I thought I was going to just come here and start performing, but somehow ended up teaching. So, what can I say? I don't remember much about how the beginning lessons were.
I think though, the other interesting point from the perspective of the diaspora is that a lot of people, a lot of the parents and the families and people in the diaspora think we were all being coached or trained to be professional dancers from the day we started. And when I say something, sometimes they would be like, oh, but kind of like it doesn't apply to us because, we're not going to be professional.
Yeah.
But I think that's not true. I tell them it was only when I was 18 or 19, much after I had graduated from college, that suddenly I picked on dance as my career. It's not like we were being groomed from age 5 to be professional dancers or anything. So the integrity and the work has to go on, whether you're professional or otherwise. You've still got to put in the effort, to learn the right way.
That's what all these students, when I first, very, very early stages when I started teaching, they used to ask me, why are you teaching adavus for 3 years? They're not going to be professionals. I say, this is the only way I know how to teach. And if you want to come and learn from me, this is the only way I know how to teach. So come, take it or leave it. And initially it was a struggle because they were used to, taking on just having Arangetram in 6 months or going on stage after 2 months or whatever. But this is the only way I knew how to teach. So, that's the way I'm sure Vaidya taught me how to teach. So, in his own way. Though I didn't remember exactly how he taught, but something in me told me this is the way I must be teaching. So, I'm sure that came from him,
Absolutely. I mean, whatever creative energies we have obviously been fed by our gurus, and also the freedom they gave us to explore it and go beyond. It was not so rigid, and that's something I think which is very special to the hereditary community of dancers rather than institutions, right?
Absolutely.
And another thing is we did not learn from performers, I think, and that is a big difference. Particularly because we were not clones either of Vadyar or of each other, as we talked about earlier. We all developed our own ways, and Vadyar kind of honed our skills and strengths and highlighted those strengths. Not that it's bad to learn in an institution, but this was a unique system, right, which is practically not there anymore. It's impossible almost for everybody to be learning one-on-one like we were fortunate to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that we all had the luxury of having individual lessons with him, afforded us the possibility of sometimes being able to learn things in a short amount of time. I remember a couple of the Varnams that I learned from him. I learned both in a few weeks' time. literally. But he would make me come to class again in the morning and in the evening. So morning before school and after school, or morning before college and right after college. And so I would go to his house, and again the same format continued through those intense classes. I wouldn't have a recording from the first class that would help me in the second, but the fact that I could go to class in like that would not be possible in an institutional setting. So sometimes looking back at this time when the Natavanars actually gave of themselves fully to the art form and to the next generation of dancers, even though it happened 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, in some cases. It's kind of a scene that has almost vanished from the dance scene today, except for very few Natavanar teachers who are there in the field. Many teachers today are performers themselves first, and then happen to be teachers as well. So this kind of dedicated teaching is also something I associate with Vaidya and his generation of Natavanar teachers, Natavanar gurus.
Yeah. So Priya, could you have imagined 26 years ago when we toured together that you would be where you are today?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I think about that often, Priya, because I think about how we don't know what is ahead, right? We don't really know. And sometimes when you're baffled, you think, okay, just trust,
The thing is, it's not about, it's of course, I've always wanted to be a dancer. It's not that I didn't have ambitions of being a dancer, I wanted to dance on stage. What do you want to do? I want to be a dancer. That was always the answer. But I don't think I knew exactly what it entailed, the kind of discipline and the kind of commitment you need to give it. I don't think I realized it. But Vaidya, he never speaks, he never tells you of what he's thinking, right? But just once he told me, "Koncham manashu seluttumma," and he had a lot of faith in me, right? He said he let me know that if only I would concentrate, right, and focus. I remember that because I know, like I told you, that I was all over the place, right? But I always think back whenever always before a program. For me, it's not only important to acknowledge both my gurus verbally, but also in my head, because I think all the lessons they taught you, right? For me,
absolutely,
realizing it was very late when Vaidya was gone. And, when auntie is there, we all tend to take all of them for granted, isn't it? That they're going to live 100 years and, correct?
No, gratitude is very, very important, I think. In fact, every Arangetram, now I've made it mandatory, only Jayasutta, no other Mangalam, no other opening. I said, no, this is going to be it. So nobody come and ask me, can we do this, can we do that? It's not going to happen. This is in, my school, my lineage, my parampara, my Vaidya used to always begin with this, and that's how it's going to be, whether you like it or not. Absolutely. And always I close my eyes, and always, like Niru was saying, I close my eyes at the beginning and I always listen to him in my head singing that song, I can see him singing. I can almost see him, singing that song, and it's very empowering, and empowering to know that we had gurus like that, who are gentle, kind, and patience is another thing, because patience is something that I do not have at all. It's not in my nature, but somehow subconsciously I think I've imbibed that from both. Mami was also very patient, and Vaidya was also patient. I remember Vaidya saying, "Ennama evla tharava okkaru solradhu," அப்படினா that means he's really upset, that's about the end of his. That's all. remember him shouting or screaming. And I was reading somewhere about
Throwing Amma.
No way. He never has done that with me. I don't know. I don't remember him, I don't know. And we are so fortunate to have that. So I think even when we teach, we feel like subconsciously we develop those that nature.
Yeah.
We don't curse and shout because we've never been treated like
Correct.
that.
Actually, Niru and I were WhatsApping each other, right? Remember, Niru, a few days ago, about the very timeless quality of that era of that time, where you went to Vadyar's class, each of us in our different vehicles, right? And how the afternoons seem to be endless. For me, normally I used to go to class before college. I went to evening college. So I used to go, I think, between 9:30 to 12:30 or something, around that time. So it was also those lazy afternoon sun. You could hear the opposite house. You could hear the sounds on the road. I mean, there's something so reassuring, comforting, and something so beautiful that you can't explain. That gift of art that he gave, that quality of timelessness, right? There's no hurry, there's no pressure.
Yeah.
There is nothing that you want to keep up with. He taught you that even through the way he's approached, there was no urgency.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, like as Priya mentioned about going to class in the late morning or afternoon time, my classes were mostly early in the morning. So I would go at 6:30 or 7 in the morning before school or before college. And the beautiful way in which I started those mornings with his music and with his Natvangam, reverberated and stayed with me throughout the day. And it is such a treasure to even think about it and look back upon those times. And looking back now that I'm older, I realize what a strain it must have been for him to have us come one after the other throughout the day and into the late afternoon and evening, and singing for each one of us, and making sure that we were all ready for our December concerts or our concerts during the other months of the year. And I remember Dhananjayan sir actually telling me once, அது எப்படிமா அவருக்கு மட்டும் மணிமணியா students வந்து தயாரிக்கிறாரு. That is when, what he meant was that when he just saw 2 or 3 good dancers of real caliber come out of the Rajaratnam sir's school, then there would be another wave and another wave of dancers who came out of his school. So it was not only it was a well-established fact that even his colleagues and other gurus admired in him, his ability to have a really well-trained group of dancers across the decades that he taught, in a life that was cut short, unfortunately, at a very young age in 1994.
I remember somebody saying that to me too. I don't remember who it was. I don't think it was Dhananjana, but I remember somebody
actually
saying...
Ramya CVC sir said it in the speech that he gave during our, when we performed together for Vaidya's 80th birthday.
Yes.
He said that.
Okay.
From Jothi to Srinidhi, all his students have been, exquisite or something to that effect. He said something and I said, wow, yeah. They all felt that he really had the choice students. But I think he's the one who trained us to be choice students.
Yeah, but also I think he was fortunate, as much as we were fortunate to have him, I think he was also fortunate to get so many good students, also committed, right? Committed.
Sincere.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we lost him way too early.
Too early. I know. I remember thinking for years after that. He had so much to give,
Yeah.
Had so much more to give. So, Priya, you have worn so many hats. You're a performer, you've been administrator, and now you're a mentor as well. So, which is your most favorite hat?
I think the period, that's my favorite. So now, now I really love, sharing what I have. I think the gift of knowledge is the most precious which we've all received, right? And that I think is something I really enjoy now. And now that with experience, right, we are also able to look back on what they gave us, the way they gave us, certain things they said, and it makes sense now, right? At that time, I don't think I understood. Like when I was listening to Niru, I was thinking how evolved she was as a student, because I don't think I thought this much, Niru. You know, how much of analysis has gone into it, and I only remember, okay, can I go through class today? It was this love-hate relationship, you know, because I love dancing, but the sheer physical stress you put your body through, right? I think I was lazy. So that my mind was more getting through class, but you seem to have really analyzed and, you know, I don't know. I mean, I was not like that. But when I think about it now, little things that he said, his reactions, his responses, now they make sense. And, you know, and I'm able to share what I have with conviction, because I know that the strength of what we have received, you know, I think we were very fortunate. Very, very fortunate.
I agree. And I think also as we grow older and partly also, because when I started teaching, as Jothi and I were saying, we had no experience, we had no intention to teach, but we're just thrown into it by default. So I would always think about what would Vaidya think about this, or should I do this? Yeah. And I was saying a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to somebody, as I said, their aura still, is there. It's like Vaidya and Mami are around all the time. So anything and everything I do, it doesn't mean I'm only doing what they gave me, and they also gave us the freedom to explore and expand and go beyond, and supported us in that. And I always think, it's something that I tell my students all the time. They'll ask me, how come you're always telling us we can do better, or we should do this better? I say, I'm not looking through my eyes, I'm not looking through the eyes of the audience. I'm looking through the eyes of my Vaidya and my Mami. And I'm thinking, if Mami was here or Vaidya was here, what will they say? Will they say, oh, Nanna train pannirka in the Korandayan Chulvada, illa, enna pandra? I don't, and so I'm looking at it from that perspective. So know that. So I'm always pushing you to be approved by my Vaidya, not by the audiences here, So I think that's something that, I don't know, for me particularly, it certainly is, I'm always aware of their presence and of their eye, of their aesthetic sense. In whatever I do.
Actually, that's very, very true, Ramya. Sorry to butt in, because I feel that this is something that was a huge eye-opener for me. So after Vaidya passed away, and when I started performing regularly, right from choice of compositions, sometimes of course later on choreography of because after a point, without Vaidya's voice and his guidance, I was not able to do his compositions. I just felt it needed him, right? So when I started working on compositions, right from how the rhythmic setup of the composition, choosing of it, then training the musicians, it was a huge struggle, because I don't think, like in an institution, you would probably have more exposure towards all that. But in Vaidya's class, I would always think, why did Vaidya not teach us this? But it didn't matter, because I think his aesthetics always guided you. And for him, when I think back now, which I definitely, for me, that's a huge indicator for my students as well, the 2 students that I have, that you should allow the student to learn. The learning has to come from also you should give them the space to learn. So, of course, we had to do it because out of necessity, while they are not being there. But I think that was his method and approach too, right? He allowed you to learn it at your pace and gave you the space for it. But his aesthetics always guided you. So I think you could never go wrong in that, So though, I didn't know anything about tala structure, or I didn't know how to guide the musicians, but I had that strong backing of that training that he had given. So I could recognize what was good and what was not so good, right? And that really helped me, and I think that's what he would have liked as well. When you think, that was the way he guided you, that space and allowing you to find yourself at your pace. I think that's one of a real big learning.
I don't know whether, I don't know whether it's conscious or unconscious either, but I think, like you said, Priya, I think this is something I also share with my students, right? ஒரு அளவுக்கு தான் சொல்லி கொடுக்க முடியும், அதுக்கு மேல அவ தான் கத்துக்கணும். அண்ட் நம்ம வாத்தியார்லாம் வந்து சொல்லி கொடுப்பால வழியா நான் சொல்வேன், இஃப் யூ வாண்ட் டு டான்ஸ் வெல், you will let me know by the way you dance that you want to do better. So then they will lead you further up. They're not going to spoon feed you or tell you I want you to be good. No, you have to want to be good, right? And then then they will automatically lead you in that direction. So that's what I tell my students also, that Vadya, nobody gave us anything, nobody handed us. We needed to justify everything we got and deserve everything we got. And I don't know, they were able to do it. I don't know why we are not able to do it here, because we have them for such a limited time, and they don't learn anything much through osmosis. They don't have the opportunity to be exposed to so much. Though now there is no excuse with Google and YouTube and this and that and the other. They can if they want to. But yeah, I think, I don't know whether Vadyar and Mami and all did it consciously, or that was the style, and the style has changed now, for the new generation.
Yeah, no, when you were talking about him, really wanting to explore further, you said they were, you brought him books for research and things like that. But even in, earlier stages, before you all started, because I was really one of his very first students, maybe the second student once he started teaching on his own. My mom was very enthusiastic. We were very, very young. So, we didn't know any better. But my mom, since she was much older and she was very, very much into the pasurams and into the literature, she would tell him to choreograph this for that, this performance or whatever, Aragar Kurabanji, everything. He would show so much enthusiasm in, getting all the material and working with that to choreograph rather than teaching the same Varur format.
Repertoire.
He was very, very willing to do research on his own and choreograph different dances for our performances. So, just to add to what Niru was talking about, his,
also actually
wanting to explore.
Yeah, also talking on lines of generosity, sometimes in the Indian fine arts la na kuda aadirukken, the Vadyaroda lecture demonstration, he'll say, chikkavane pannuma, even though there were pieces that I hadn't learned from him, he was fine, to have us do pieces that we had learned from Mami as a part of his demonstration. He was very, very comfortable with that, and very open-minded in that regard, And I think we didn't see all of that, and now that when we look back, And also as we've grown older and we've thought more and we've taught more, we've performed more, and then we think, oh wow, we received all this and we did it. It's time to acknowledge that, So Niru, you had done some projects and research shaping California, right?
Yes.
Who gave you the California the Society for Humanities?
Yeah, so the California Council for the Humanities, I won a grant to do a project under what they called a California Story Grant. So the little blurb that went with the grant stated that, do you know of a community of people who are Californian, who pursue something or who are part of a group which makes their story uniquely Californian, and we'd like to hear from you about this group of people that you identify with. And naturally for me, I thought of the first generation of Indian American dancers who had settled in California, and that included Ramya Harishankar, of course, and then Maithili Kumar of Abhinaya Dance Company, Vijay Prakash of the Shakti Dance Company, Chitresh Das ji of Chandam School for Kathak, and Catherine Akka and Kunhiraman sir of Kalanjali dances here in the Bay Area. So these were the artists that I wanted to talk to document their life here in California and how they started out. Because by the time I immigrated and many others immigrated to the US, there were certain patterns that had been set in motion through the work that these artists had done. Whether it was renting certain auditoriums that were suitable for Indian classical dance performances, whether it was working with stage technicians and having them understand our music and our dance. So those were the nitty-gritty parts of it. But there were also other things. There were most dance teachers taught in their garages, which were where cars were never parked. Children came in to the garage or to a larger room if there was a larger room available. And, this is how they started. Many institutions started in a small way and grew from that firm conviction that these artists had. And also many of them, all of them actually, started producing their own programs. So that is a huge leap from when you are an artist in India, where all you had to do was to wear your makeup and just turn up on stage, and then everything else is set for you, because the presenting organization, the Sabha, takes on the responsibility of everything else. Here, the artists themselves became the presenters for the diaspora audiences. And so I wanted to talk to all of them and document their early days and show the California Council for the Humanities and all the people who access this grant information about what a unique California story this is. It's very important. It's very important that we not only talk amongst ourselves, but we talk to others outside of our community to make sure that they understand what we stand for, what the artistic vision is about, and every little thing that goes into the performance that happens. So that was the grant that I worked on.
Yeah,
yes.
That was in line with Neru's interest in researching and writing, as well
Fantastic.
as
only when she's talking we realize
journalism.
Only when she's talking we realize how much we've done. From the time we came here, we transformed from dancers to Natuanars to teachers
Everything.
to Natuanars to organizers to inviting other artists to perform in our area and cultivating an audience.
Yeah, absolutely, building an audience, right? There was no audience when we came.
Yeah.
But it's been a great journey over the years, and whatever each of us have been able to do to carry on Vaidya's work and Vaidya's legacy and his aesthetic, I think is very, very important, and very important to record as well for future generations who may not have had that interaction with Vaidya, but who will remember or be able to see him through whatever we shared through this documentation. So I want to thank all of you a lot for being here. I want to first say that I admire Jothi. She's so detached after so many years of teaching, and obviously requires a lot of dedication and commitment, as we talked just a few minutes ago. But to be able to walk away from it and say, I'm done and I'm just going to be a grandma, that takes a lot, and kudos to you for that. Kudos to you for that. And of course, Priya, despite all your training in Bharatha Natyam and everything, your ability to work with different artists and work on different kinds of projects, that takes something, to be again, probably something you imbibe from Vaidya, of being open-minded and open to learn and grow by associating with different people, right? We certainly, so certainly that's commendable, Priya. And Niru too, being able to combine all of her talents, being a journalist and writing, as you said just now, writing, and she was an editor for a magazine for a little while. So to be able to combine all of that is not easy, So thank you again, and for being a part of this conversation and being a part of this journey of dance of mine.
Thank you, Ramya, for inviting.
Thank you, Ramya.
Thank you.
Thanks for this wonderful session.
Yeah,
Yes,
great.
thank you,
Wonderful
Ramya.
meeting, seeing you guys.